Great. Okay, we've still got people joining, but we're going to make a start. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining the call at these very different times around the world. We're overjoyed to have so many of you with us, and it's my absolute privilege to open today's event. So my name's Mark. I'm Senior Manager for Donor Partnerships and Communications at STIR Education, and I'm just going to start with a few minutes to explain what you can expect from the event today, and then we'll get right into it. So please do keep those introductions coming in the chat. It will be great to see more of those and have everybody introduced. But we'd like to start by thanking all of our partners for their support of STIR, not just in this difficult year, but in all of the, in many cases, for many years. That goes for our partner governments and all of our current donors. We wouldn't be here without you all. So starting with some brief housekeeping. Everybody's doing this great so far, but please do remember to keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. We are going to have lots of opportunities throughout the sessions of this partner strategy group to ask questions. But if you have questions at any other time, please use the chat function. And that's why we've got you practicing that already. We're going to have a 5-minute break in the middle of this session, so just so you're aware, there will be that opportunity. This event is currently being recorded. We're really keen to use some of the footage to share with people who can't be with us. But if you prefer not to be included in any of that footage in the future, please do let us know. We'll be very happy to accommodate that. And there's also going to be an opportunity for networking at the end of both today's session and on Wednesday. If there are people on the call today who you'd love to be connected with, please do let us know, and we'll be very happy to facilitate that. Finally, as I lead on communications, I'm very interested in our social media. So for anybody who is active on any of those platforms, please use the hashtag STIRPSG, and we'll be delighted to continue the conversation online as well. So on to today's agenda. This is the session on welcome, agenda and objectives. Coming next, we're going to have some reflections from our CEO, Chair, and introduce you all to our new Chief Executive, who will be starting in January. We're then going to have a session on our progress so far and bring everybody up to speed. There will be a discussion of some of our key questions. Then our short break, that will be in around 45 minutes time. And the second half of today's session will be predominantly a panel discussion with some senior officials from each of our current geographies. Finally, before I pass over to Sharath, we just wanted to explain how today's session fits into our overall partner strategy group agenda. So this is day one. Tomorrow we have 4 virtual field visits taking place in each of our geographies, and we're really keen that as many of you as possible are able to attend at least one of those field visits. Hopefully you've had the joining instructions, but please do contact us if you would like to attend one and don't know when it's taking place. And then we're really hoping that as many of you as possible will be able to join us again on Wednesday at the same time to discuss some key strategic questions for STIR in some more detail and really input into our direction both for 2021 and going forwards. Finally, I've mentioned key questions a couple of times. Hopefully you've all read this in our pre-read, but for those who weren't able to do the homework, these are the 3 key questions that we're aiming to answer through this 3-day event. The first of these questions, we're hoping we can primarily answer through the panel discussion later on. And for the second and third questions here, we're going to have a brief introduction to the questions and the topic from Rain and John, members of our global leadership team. We're then hoping that we can look at these questions through our virtual field visits and discuss them in more detail in Wednesday's session. So without further ado, can I pass over to our current Chief Executive, Sharath Jivan, for a few thoughts?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. But I just wanted to say just a couple of thoughts. I'll get it. This is a slightly weird PSG or Partner Strategy Group for me because it's my last one before handing the reins over to Girish, who you'll hear from very shortly. And so I'll have a chance to say thank you properly on Wednesday. So I'll leave that for then. But I just want to say today just how amazing it is to look across this Zoom screen and see so many friends, partners, people, government partners who've worked deeply with in their education system, funding partners who've believed in us and invested in our plans, members of our team, of course, who've worked so hard across this very difficult year for everyone, of course, in the sector in the world. And also so many peer organizations, advisors, friends, just been valuable in helping keep us on the right track, if you like, over these years. Not an easy task. And as many of you know, over the 9 years that STIR's existed, there's always been a very strong culture of learning and reflection, and a very strong value that we don't have all the answers up front. I think that's all a lot of people remember about us as our values in some ways. And I think that's been a value that's been very honest and true. We have often been trying to define, where can we add the most value? What should our core purpose be? How should we work in the way that is most scalable, cost-effective, sustainable overall? And it's been an incredible journey. And I think over the last couple of years, I think we started to make a lot of progress in some of those questions. And that journey has continued. But of course, this year we've had some of these unprecedented times with the pandemic, and so many things have come out from that as well. So it's an incredibly important time to come together. This is our 5th PSG. Let me check, and I think I've got that number for sure, right? And we've had 2 in London, 1 in India, 1 in Uganda. And this is the first time we're doing it in this format. And it's amazing, actually, again, of sort of many of the benefits. We've never been able to have such a dispersed group together in this way for obvious reasons. So just amazing to see it work. And I think a real tribute to the ingenuity of all of us here and the team as well. But I think that value of really being very open and honest about what's gone well. There have been many things that we've done to survive and even thrive this year, which I'm very proud of, and very proud of our team and everyone that's helped us in that regard. But also being really honest about what do we find difficult, where are we struggling? And I think Mark shared just before some of the 3 key questions we're trying to focus on today. There are questions I think that are important for STIR and to really ensure we meet the next level of impact and achieve our ambitions. But I also hope there are 3 questions that are deeply important for the sector as well. And the questions I think many of us as practitioners in development struggle with and are thinking about now, especially given the climate around us. So what I'm hoping, if the past PSGs have gone anything to go by, we'll all come out of these 3 days with sharpened clarity and purpose and a sense of direction around some of these key questions organizationally as STIR. But I also hope that for all of us in the sector, they'll help to unlock some learning that can be useful in whatever context we work in more broadly as well. And that's been very much the 2-pronged sort of promise and approach we've been trying to follow through this PSG overall. But just cannot say how energizing all of us, and myself in particular, have found this time to reflect, to be honest with all of you together, and really from there find energy and direction going forward. So you'll definitely find a lot of momentum to take forward from these 3 days. And just want to say a huge thanks for being part of it. It means a lot to us and will reshape an incredible 3 days of learning and reflection for everyone involved. So a big thank you. Mark, back to you.
We're going straight to our chair, Joe Owen.
Mark, thank you very much. So, look, it's my pleasure to not just welcome you to this event, but thank you all, both for attending and for supporting us on this incredible journey that we've been over the last 9 years. We would not be here without you. So thank you. And let me extend a particular thanks to all the people who, I was going to say, have travelled so far to be on this to be with us, but you haven't travelled at all. But you're here from all around the world, distinguished guests from Indonesia, Uganda, India, I think Delhi, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and New York, and of course on the early shift, California as well. So if you hear a sound of snoring, that's probably California, so trying to get to grips with 4 o'clock in the morning. But thank you all very much for making that. As Shareth said, from day one, we have recognized we don't have all the answers, which is why this event is so important. And the 3 questions that Mark outlined, they're not academic questions. These are vital questions, and your answers to them will absolutely shape the way the board thinks about how we take STIR forwards, and it will absolutely shape the way that the executive think about how they take STIR forwards as well. So this is a really important event for us. So we've always known that we rely on your collective knowledge, wisdom, and experience, and it's wonderful that you're bringing it to the table today. But we knew that if we wanted to get the most out of your collective knowledge, wisdom, and experience, we had to be, and still have to be, completely open book with you. We couldn't hide inconvenient facts or difficult problems from you. So from day one, day 0, we've attempted to practice radical honesty. Some people might say it's insane honesty, where you're able to see exactly what we're doing, warts and all, because that's the only way that we can together discover the very best solutions to some of the very toughest challenges. And each year you've been wonderful guides to us, and I hope this year will be no exception. And indeed, it'll be no exception from our point of view, because you're going to find that nothing is rehearsed. This is reality television, sort of gone wild. It's absolute reality. This is live. And like everyone else, STIR has had to adapt at light speed to new conditions. I'm sure we can do many things better, and this is where your knowledge of how other people have been learning and adapting can help us adapt even better. So we look forward to your contributions. Let me just say a final thing about the leadership. You've heard there is a transition going on. Many of you will know Shareth, our founder and CEO. He decided to step down about a year ago. He came to me with a glint in his eye that he's got a new idea for something he wants to chase. And anyone who knows Shareth will know that once he gets that glint in his eye, there is no stopping him. So it's actually with great sadness that we are going to be saying goodbye to him at the end of this year. I will say more about this hopefully later on, but just to recognize at the moment that he has actually performed the ultimate magician's trick of conjuring something wonderful out of nothing. And we all owe him a huge debt of gratitude here, as do indeed many thousands of professionals and millions of children around the world who will benefit greatly from what he has done. That has left us with a gaping hole in leadership to be filled. And I was sort of doubting whether we could fill it really, but we shouldn't have worried, surprisingly, because we've been immensely fortunate to find a truly outstanding leader to take STIR on the next stage of its journey. This is someone who's had over 30 years of NGO experience. He's got extensive leadership experience, first as Deputy CEO of WaterAid and then as CEO ActionAid. He really understands the challenges of partnership working and of scaling and of impact. But aside from his extraordinary experience, I think it's his values that really struck us, his commitment, his honesty, his extraordinary ability to listen makes him not just a good leader, but also a great partner as well. So it's with great pleasure that I'm now able to introduce and hand over to our CEO-elect, Girish Menon. Girish.
Thank you very much, Joe, for your very generous introduction. Really delighted to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are, all the way from Indonesia in the east to US, which is absolutely an amazing audience to be here, and slightly unnerving, I must say. I'm still not in post. I've heard about the wonderful work that STIR has done. I'm super impressed with the high quality staff that STIR has around the world. And coming into this forum with over 70 participants in experts all over the world can be slightly unnerving. But I'm here with all excitement. The main reason why I was attracted to STIR was the clarity of focus and its mission. Before I decided to apply, I spoke to a few people who knew about STIR, and everybody was unequivocal in what they had to say about STIR. They all said it's absolutely a very unique organization with an incredible reputation. And I think it's my absolute privilege and my real good fortune to come into an organization that over the last 9 years has built such a credible space in such a short period of time, reaching out to millions of children, thousands of teachers, and so many schools around the world. So Sharath is leaving behind some huge shoes to fill. The last time I checked, I think his shoe size was 9, but still it's far bigger than what I think those shoe size actually indicate. My genuine hope is that working in partnership with the board, in partnership with colleagues around the world, and indeed in partnership with every one of you on this call and everyone who has been part of the STIR journey, that I can support and contribute to taking further the amazing legacy that Sharath is leaving behind. So in my past lives, over the last 3 decades, I've had the opportunity of working with education programs, though not exclusively, but as part of a multi-sectoral approach in several countries in Asia and Africa. But as I was mentioning to Joe in an earlier conversation, much of it was focused on addressing what we refer to as the demand deficit. What is a deficit that stops children from getting into schools in the first place? So looking at how to encourage parents, how to motivate parents to get children to school. What struck me about STIR was this whole concept of a systems change in education. It was about those two concepts of intrinsic motivation and lifelong learning. And it didn't take me long to recognize the huge power of those two concepts in trying to pursue knowledge, pursue excellence, and how we support children in achieving and realizing their potential, with the teachers and educational officials actually at the core of that plan. And that kind of partnership was, in my view, quite unique, having seen lots of education programs around the world. So that's the excitement that drove me to come into STIR. And I've had a few conversations already with Sharath, with Nitya, with John, with Rain, with Anamika, with Mark, and I'm looking forward to many of the other conversations. I'm speaking to Jenny soon, but I have a few other conversations lined up to understand the depth of STIR's program. So this indeed is an absolutely fantastic opportunity for me to be a true listener and listen to the depth of knowledge that's there around this Zoom call, to listen to your responses to those 3 questions and help us understand and get that steer on what is next for the organization. There are ambitious goals, as you probably are all aware of. It's about expanding into new countries. It's about increasing the reach by 10 times with a budget that's probably just 2.5 times, just to make sure that we are being cost effective in creating a model that can be replicated by governments around the world. We are, as we all know, in very uncharted, unprecedented times. One of the big pieces of feedback that we get from countries around the world that I've been associated with is about a huge cut to budgets around the world. And when budgets are cut, the first things to be cut are education and health, the classic social sector programs. So there is a real demand, there's a real need for the world to come up with solutions that can be scaled up without sacrificing quality, with the full engagement of teachers, with the full engagement of educational officials, with parents, and of course, with the view of children being core and central to that. So that's what I'm really looking forward to co-create that journey of what happens in a post-COVID world. How do we address a situation of so many more children? We already have 1 billion children who are not in schools because of lockdown. We already had 260 million children who are not in schools anyway. Added to that, there's a genuine fear that once the schools do reopen for various reasons, largely economic, you'll have 10 million more children who are unable to come to school. We've heard a lot about how the COVID crisis has deepened existing inequalities, be they economic inequalities or technological inequalities, as we see. Many of us are privileged to be on a Zoom call. Many children, many communities just don't have that facility. And we can well imagine a world where digital technology is likely to drive a lot of educational investments and innovations, and how a large proportion of children are likely to be left behind. We just have to add those layers of inequities to see that, again, there's going to be a huge gender dimension to it. Girls are likely to be far more disadvantaged than boys. And the challenge of those inequities will be added on to the challenge of addressing the primary education and learning deficit that STIR already has been focusing on. We need all of us in this space, and I'm really looking forward to all those inspiring ideas, the innovative ideas, so that in the spirit of true learning, true reflection, and genuine partnership, we can make lifelong learning and intrinsic motivation a reality. When Sharath comes back on a PSG next year or a few years down the line, he should feel proud that that legacy does continue. I also have to apologize that I'm here with you only today. I still have my day job, so I do need to go back to that. I'm going to miss out on those virtual field visits that I was very keen to be on, but I hope that soon enough, as soon as the restrictions are lifted, I'll be able to visit the programs in Uganda and in India, and of course, Indonesia and Ethiopia when the time is right. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to a very inspiring couple of hours. I am now delighted to hand it over to Nithya to take us through the rest of the program for the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Girish. And we're really, really excited to have you with us. And just to say, we're really looking forward to having the conversation with all of you in the new year once Girish starts in his role. And I think, like Joe and like Sharath and Girish were saying, what a year this has been for us and for all of you, I assume. Lots of learning, lots of challenges, but at the same time, some fantastic opportunity. And before we sort of deep dive into the key questions that we framed early in the session, as also hear from our amazing panelists, I wanted to take the chance to share an overview of where we are at STIR, what we've been up to in 2020, and what the years ahead look like. And before I start, just a few housekeeping, just a reminder, please keep some of those questions you have in mind, please include them in the chat. We'll make sure to take at least a few of them at the end of it. If not, we'll definitely come back to you with that at the end of our PSG. And again, any questions or any feedback at all, we'd love for you to keep that coming as well. So in terms of our approach, we reignite intrinsic motivation in teachers and officials so that they can build the foundations of lifelong learning in every child. And in doing so, we partner with state and national governments. So in India, that sees us partnering with the state governments of Delhi, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. In Uganda with the Ministry of Education and Sports, and our newest partnership, which is the Ministry of Education and Culture in Indonesia. We know many of them are here with us today, and we're really grateful for their time and look forward to the conversations over the coming days. Next slide, please. And what this has meant in the 8 years since STIR was founded is that we are reaching more than 200,000 teachers, over 6 million children across both of these countries at an average cost per child per year of 50 cents, an annual operating budget of £3.9 million, and have the support of some of the most fantastic funders, many of whom have been with us from our early years, many who've been supporting us more recently. We're delighted to have all of you here today. I can see, across the various tile boxes, and look forward to shaping that journey together as we've always done, and look forward to the years ahead. Next slide, please, Mark. So several years ago, as a volunteer, I had the chance to speak to a boy in a primary school in southern India who very sort of casually shared with me that he didn't think, people in school were interested in him, or he didn't really find any joy in being in school. And I remember at the end of that conversation thinking how different it was to my own experience. I really enjoyed being in school. I had a great set of teachers who made me feel really safe, welcome, and I trusted them as individuals. And I think that is the key to what we are doing at STIR. For us, our vision is to build the foundations of lifelong learning in every child. And I think more than ever before, especially given COVID-19 and the pandemic, it is so important and vital that children develop the skills that will enable them to succeed and thrive in a world of unknown unknowns. Skills such as engagement, safety, curiosity and critical thinking, self-esteem. Next slide, please. And to do so together with whole education systems, and which is why our system partnerships are so vital for us, so that we can ensure that these foundations pervade from senior government officials to teachers based on the principle of role modeling and behavior change. And so our approach is based on really three components, which is peer networks, action and feedback, and reflection. And these three activities underpin everything we do with teachers, with head teachers and government officials. And they form the heart of what we call as a termly learning improvement cycle, and where each such cycle focuses on a specific theme, such as the science of learning. And typically, what this translates to on the ground is, firstly, district officials are introduced to the content of this cycle in an intensive 3-day training meeting, which is led by our team, the STIR team. These district officials then go on to lead training sessions for head teachers, school leaders, to build their confidence and capability to lead network meetings, which is then followed by the teacher network meetings, which happen on a monthly basis, where 20 or 30 teachers come together and focus on learning new practices and to enable higher quality interactions with their children. At each of these levels, we also introduce monthly coaching and support to enable high quality feedback and increase autonomy, mastery, and purpose at all levels of the education system. Next slide, please. And you can only imagine what COVID-19 must have meant for such an in-person intensive model. But as somebody once said, every crisis represents an opportunity, and we've had some fantastic opportunity to try innovative delivery methods during this time. This has meant, for example, in Uganda, we have become the first ever organization to develop radio continuous professional development program for teachers in partnership with the Ministry of Education and Sports, which is now aired across 16 different radio stations and on a fortnightly basis. In Delhi, it has meant that our model has gone entirely remote, with almost all parts of the approach being done virtually. And in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, we've been able to expand to even more districts than we originally envisioned for in this year, with a lot of the local government officials playing a key role in expansion to the newer districts. Next slide, please. And as we've had to adapt and change to this new normal, we also had the findings from our first year of our 4-year longitudinal study, which we are running in Uganda and in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka in India, with our partner Ichuli Consulting, who are also here with us today. And the findings have been encouraging, where we're seeing teachers spending more time in school and more time on task and trying out new classroom strategies, and observing that this is making a positive change in their classrooms. And of course, there's more to do. And so we're going to focus on strengthening behavior change in the classroom and ensuring that these sort of positive behaviors are consistently role modeled by officials. Next slide, please. And what's been heartening for us and encouraging for us is also that a lot of what we're seeing from our findings also ties into the key insights we had from our partner strategy group workshop that we led in Uganda last year, where there was a strong agreement among partners on the importance of intrinsic motivation in improving learning sustainably, and also the importance of building deeper relationships across the different actors within an education system. And what we hope to do over this next session, as well as the next 2 days together with all of you, is dig deeper into some of those improvements that we've been able to shape together with our system partners, as also learn what we can be doing differently and what we should be thinking about as we go ahead in the years. Next slide, please. And before I sort of wrap up and hand over to Rain and John to really take us through the key questions, I also wanted to highlight why this is really a key conversation for us to have at this point of time, and why this is really an inflection point for us as an organization. There is, of course, the criticality of COVID-19, and it is important for us to not just work towards short-term recovery, but also longer-term resilience. Lots of our geographies are thinking about schools returning and what it means for them. At the same time, we are entering a critical phase in terms of our partnerships with some of our geographies. We're entering year 4 of our system partnership in Delhi. We are building sustainability plans with the Ministry of Education in Uganda, and also moving to a much more linear model, which we're calling the Central Learning Partnership, which will see our government and district officials take far more initiative of the approach and have the support of a much smaller STIR team. And as we do all of that, we're also looking at some exciting new pastures with Indonesia, our program launching there soon. Our scoping plans beginning with the Ministry of Education in Ethiopia. Both Karen and Masrisha, who lead our work in Indonesia and Ethiopia, are here on the call, and I'm sure some of you will be able to see them if they wave across the many ties. At the same time, we're also starting early discussions with our newer countries, Brazil and Egypt, and we are really, really excited to have both of those partners here on the call today as well. So just to summarize, it's been a challenging year for all of us, but also we've seen interesting opportunities to innovate, be creative, and really take on those challenges. And just to reiterate what Sharath was saying earlier, as much as this is really an important time for us as an organization to reflect and have your inputs and feedback, we hope this also opens up more wider conversation for all of us as the sector as we move beyond this time and as we move together and work with our education system partners. Before I hand over, I just want to check if there were any questions that we can take at this point in time, Mark. No problems at all. If not, we will make sure that we will come back to some of those questions at the end of the session and as we summarize each day itself. So without further ado, we are now going to go into our key questions, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to 2 of my colleagues. We will first have Rain Kerwin, who is the Director of Monitoring and Evaluation, and he's everything M&E and all the magic behind that you all see. And he will start with the first key question. He will then hand over to John McIntosh, who's our Director of Design and Program Readiness, who will talk a little bit about the sort of the questions we're thinking just in terms of sustainability and longer term itself. So over to you, Rain.
Thanks, Nitya, and good morning, everyone, from a very rainy New York this morning. So yeah, my name is Rain Turbind. I head STIR's monitoring, evaluation, and research work. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about sort of deepening human relationships. And I think many of us in the development sector, right, talk a lot about system change. And I think last year when we came together for our funder and strategy meeting, we talked a lot about the importance of really embedding STIR's approach in the systems that we work in. And I think our key insight over the past year has been that ultimately, right, system change is really about people who make up that system and how those people work together. So that's really what we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes. So how do we sort of deepen how people work together? And especially like how do we shift how people work together towards a real focus on constantly trying to improve, basically. I'm going to talk specifically about, why relationships are so core to what we do. I'm going to share a little bit more about what we learned about our focus on strengthening relationships so far. And most importantly, I'm going to talk about why there's now a really exciting opportunity to really deepen relationships going forward. And that's really also what we're excited to get your input on, is really this question of how can we further deepen relationships in the future, and what role could technology play in sort of supporting that process? And also, what's the role of equity in a post-COVID-19 world? So Nithya talked a little bit about this already, but relationships are really at the core of everything that we do. So we believe that the most sustainable way to build the foundations of lifelong learning is really by reigniting intrinsic motivation at all levels of a system to thereby enable a role modeling effect, right? From education officials at the top towards the district level, the community level, head teachers, and ultimately students. And at the core of this role modeling effect is really how do all those people work together, right? So like, how are they constantly supporting each other? How are they reflecting together? How are they providing each other with feedback? How are they trying to improve? And that focus on improvement is really core of how STIR looks at relationships. And I think a lot of people, right, who sort of talk about system change often talk about, okay, how do we sort of shift cultures from sort of box ticking accountability towards a genuine focus on improvement? And that's really what we're trying to do. Now, in order to enable that role modeling effect and to shift that culture towards improvement, we try to build sort of core routines in education systems. So we try to support officials and teachers to conduct high quality observations, to provide each other with really high quality and nuanced feedback, and to have really good high quality coaching discussions with each other. So Mark, if you go to the next slide. So over the past year and a half, we've been working with a evaluation partner, an external partner called Ichuli. They're based in Kampala in Uganda. And together with them, we are running 3 ongoing longitudinal studies. So 2 of them are in India, in our 2 southern states, so Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, and the other one is in eastern Uganda. So the study is led by JPEL affiliated Professor Dr. Rebecca Thornton. And through this study, we're really trying to understand STIR's progress against our ambitions over 4 years. So we do that by measuring behavior change focused on the foundations of lifelong learning among, again, officials, teachers, and students. And that focus on measuring behavior change is really core to what we do. So I think the core outcomes that we're trying to measure, so things like intrinsic motivation, these aspects of lifelong learning that Nithya talked about, so curiosity, critical thinking, etc. These are not always easy outcomes to measure, as I think many of you know. So our focus is really on trying to actually observe what is it that people actually do, right? So do teachers spend more time teaching? Are children becoming more curious because they're asking more questions? Are officials spending more time in school supporting teachers, etc.? So it's really that focus on behavior change. And through the study, we track teachers over those 4 years. Now, our first round of data reflected STIR's progress about 1.5 years into our partnership with the governments in Karnataka and Uganda, and just a few months into our partnership with the government in Tamil Nadu. And I think really what we're seeing through that longitudinal study so far is that, and I think very promisingly, at large scale, we're seeing officials and teachers, tangibly changing their behavior in line with the foundations of lifelong learning. And we're also seeing officials and teachers putting in place the routines to really strengthen how they work together. So for example, officials are spending more time supporting each other through observation and feedback. They're spending more time away from their offices, actively supporting head teachers and teachers. And teachers are also, tangibly trying out new classroom practices. So I think that's really promising, right? So at large scale, we're seeing officials and teachers, tangibly changing their behaviors. And that's really what the first year, maybe 2 years of our partnership with the government is really focused on. So how do we really shift the routines in a system? How do we get people away from their offices into schools, actively supporting teachers? So there's real momentum there, and I'm really proud of that. And I think we're also seeing some promise in our theory of change. So that role modeling effect really does seem to matter. So when we see, for example, a education official spending more time in school, actively engaging with their teacher. We're also seeing that teacher sort of trying out more practices, actively trying to engage their students more. And we're also seeing students respond to that. So there's a really promising sort of signs of that role modeling effect. I do think that role modeling effect sort of works both ways, right? So if a district official sets a poor example, so for example, attendance remains like a really big challenge in the systems that we work with. So if a district official doesn't always show up to work, for example, that also seems to trickle down to head teachers, to teachers, and sort of sets a standard that it's okay to not always show up. So I think that role modeling effect really seems to happen and then sort of works both ways. I think the big sort of opportunity looking for STIR and our government partners going forward is really how can we deepen how people work together? So again, despite these routines starting to happen, so regular observations, feedback, and coaching happening, they tend to focus primarily on sort of praise and sort of focusing on what's going well, and not so much on what could be better, how can we improve. And I think that's the big opportunity going forward, right? So like, how do we get everyone focused on maintaining these routines, but really shifting the focus of these routines towards deep reflection and really a focus on learning and improvement. And we think like if we're able to sort of shift that culture, then we can realize further and sort of deeper behavior change as well. Now, Mark, if you go to the next slide. We basically think there are three sort of big ways of going about this, right? Of going to shift to shifting this culture towards improvement. I think the first one is, and in line with our theory of change, is to really take our focus on role modeling one level further up. So from the district level towards the central ministry level. So the big question that we're asking ourselves is, how do we make sure that that role modeling effect starts all the way at the top, right? So that, for example, commissioners in Uganda, state level officials in India, how do we make sure that they set a really positive example of what it takes to develop really strong relationships with their district education counterparts? And then, again, like how do we really make sure that that role modeling effect starts with them? We've recently conducted an internal qualitative study on trying to understand these relationships between the center in systems and the district level. I think there's a few really interesting insights coming out there. So I think what we're seeing is that very often central level officials tend to lack a bit of a feeling of purpose, right? So they're often sort of shifted from department to department. So they used to work in, let's say, the health sector. They're now sort of shifted towards education. So constantly they're being transferred across different departments. And it's hard for them to really develop a clear sense of purpose, as well as a sense of mastery. So one of the things that they shared with us is we want to develop stronger relationships with those below us at the district level, but we don't always know how to, right? So it's sort of those soft skills around relationship building, communication, etc. So I think there's a big opportunity there around how do we better support those at the central level to develop even stronger relationships at the district level. And I think similarly, we're seeing that desire at the district level as well. So I think they will often, like a district education official will often tell us, okay, like we understand how important that role modeling effect is, but it's really important for us to also see an example of what does a really good feedback session look like, for example. So it seems that they're also really craving so deeper relationships with those above them. And again, I think there's a big opportunity there to strengthen how those officials work together. I think a second big area where we see a lot of potential is technology. So the big question we're asking ourselves here is, can technology play a supportive role to deepen how people work together? I think it's a very tricky one, right? Because I think there's been different studies coming out recently, for example, one through the RISE platform that shows that there's a risk here that technology could replace how people work together, right? And that's the last thing that we want. So I think Nithya talked a lot about how physical interaction and bringing people together in network meetings, in feedback sessions is really at the core of what we do. I think we want to be very careful that we don't use technology to replace people and how people work together, but we do want to explore whether technology could play a role in sort of nudging people towards having higher quality discussions with each other. So as part of this, we've been working with the Sergo Foundation. They're based in DC. And they do a lot of work on applying machine learning techniques to understand what drives behavior change for different segments of officials and teachers, right? So why is it that some officials are very motivated and they are changing their behavior quite quickly? Why is it that others are also motivated, but they really struggle to change their behavior, for example? And how can we use that information to provide more targeted support? So over the past couple of months, we've been working on building a WhatsApp platform. Initially, we thought about developing our own app, but we think that WhatsApp is just more accessible to people in the systems that we work in. And we're trying to now explore if we can provide officials and teachers with very targeted nudges ahead of the coaching and the feedback sessions that they have. So you could think of, for example, we might send them like a simple video, right? What does a really engaging classroom look like? So that when a teacher meets with their head teacher, they can use that reference point to have a deeper discussion. Or it might be a data visual, right? To show teachers and officials whether they're sort of improving over time. And if not, why might that be? It could also be very targeted probing questions, for example. So right now we're in the midst of sort of piloting these different nudges and then trying to understand whether these might support not to change behavior directly, but to help officials and teachers to have higher quality, improved focused discussions. And I think that's the big question that we would love your input on over the next few days, basically. It's really these three questions. So the first one, the sort of big overarching question is, how can we deepen relationships between officials at all levels and teachers to stimulate further behavior change? And below that, how could technology, if at all, support to deepen rather than replace relationships? Again, I really want to stress here that we're not assuming that technology can indeed play a role. I think that's a hypothesis in itself. Good technology, if at all, support, help deepen relationships. Also, how do we ensure equity as we continue to deepen relationships? Right? I think all of us know that I think technology brings a lot of sort of promising signs. There's also concerns around equity and people have equitable access to technology. So there's a big focus here on how do we ensure equity as we continue to deepen relationships. I'll pause here before I hand over to my colleague John, who's going to talk a bit more about sustainability. But any clarification questions? Is there anything that I can help clarify at this point?
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi, Rain. This is Atul Gandhi from India, It'll Give Foundation. Just curious to know that you mentioned sufficiently that the intervention is trying to look at the intrinsic motivation and the behavior change. But I believe that the overall intervention is ultimately to improve the learning of the child and have a more holistic learning experience in the school, and not only limited to the textbook, which has unfortunately become the only thing which child learns. But how can we go beyond the book and give child a holistic learning experience? So in essentially looking at how our work with the teacher and the officials is really affecting the learning outcomes or learning levels. Has any effort been made, or maybe it's early in the intervention and it's already on the cards and you're going to look at it?
Yeah, good question. Thank you, Atul. So for us, I think what you say is absolutely right. So our focus is really on how do we support children very holistically to develop these foundations of lifelong learning, right? So it's sort of core outcomes like curiosity and critical thinking and self-esteem and engagement. And the way that we try to do that is by really clear that. So that's just a bit of background noise. So the way that we try to do that is by really making sure that teachers role model those core behaviors, right? And I think that's been our learning in terms of our work so far, is that you cannot really develop those skills just from a textbook, right? Or just by talking about it, but they have to be role modeled. So children have to see an example of what that might look like. And equally, like teachers also need to see an example of right? Like, what does really good engagement look like, or what does really good critical thinking look like? And that's what we're seeing from the longitudinal study so far, that we are seeing some of these outcomes come to life. So, for example, we are seeing, students asking more questions in class, and more why questions and how questions, for example. We're seeing children more engaged with their teacher, etc. So I think for us, yeah, that a focus on holistic so learning, and especially lifelong learning, is really critical. And again, I think the way that we try to go about that is really by making sure that teachers role model those outcomes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, then I'll hand over now. I saw just a question from Camilla in the chat. So the name of the partner that we're working with on machine learning techniques is called Sergo, but I'll write it in the chat as well. Cool, so I'll hand over to John here, who's going to talk a bit more about sustainability.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rain. Yes, just to briefly introduce myself, my name is John McIntosh. I'm based in London, and I work on our program design and internal training. This topic of sustainability, what I'm going to be talking about over the next few minutes is what we sort of understand by that term and why we think it's important, and also just share some of our early thinking around how we might address some of these topics around how we more effectively work with central government as part of that. I will warn you in advance, I'm going to sort of throw out some quite big ideas, but given that this is sort of a 10-minute slot, there'll be a bit of an introduction. There'll be more time on Wednesday to sort of get into the meat and detail of some of what I say here as well, but hopefully it'll give you a bit of an overview of just how we're starting to think about some of this stuff. Mark, next slide, please. So I think there's sort of two big ideas that I want to share here. So firstly is why we think that this topic of sustainability is important is ultimately grounded in what we're trying to do, which, related to what Rain is saying, is all about creating these ongoing cultures of improvement where people are getting better in the systems all the time in order to promote improved outcomes for children, teachers, and everyone in the system. And we really do see, and we're increasingly just understanding that central officials are really, really a critical piece of the puzzle to making that happen. Particularly when it comes to sustaining the effects of the program over time. Now, I think just to define some terms here, I think by sustainability, what we're talking about is fully embedding the program within existing government structures, which I think sort of here too has been seen as the holy grail of NGO work. But while I think there's quite limited success in that happening globally, I think, just referring to what Girish was saying, in this post-COVID world, we're going to have to do more with less. Education budgets and money for education probably is going to be less over time. We don't know how much and by when that will be true. But we do know that we will have to maximize the effectiveness of what we already have. So we think that addressing this question becomes ever more critical. I think the distinction that I would want to make here a little bit is between sustainability and scalability. So in terms of how our program currently runs, we have been able to scale because governments have been such effective partners for us. And without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do now. And we are really fortunate to work firsthand with really many talented government officials and bureaucrats who have the desire to make a difference and are very, very capable of doing so. And there's lots of good evidence globally of large scale
Sorry, everyone. Looks like John's having a bit of trouble. We'll just give him a minute.
Hey everyone, sorry, huge apologies. Not the most opportune time for your internet to go. But can everyone hear me again?
All good, John. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Great. So I was talking about the complexities, I think, in supporting governments to actually own an intervention without the support of the partner. I think a big part of the reason for this is that governments are hugely complex beasts, and this, I think, goes beyond the talents of individual bureaucrats, who, as we know, as we said, is crucial to what we currently do. But we've seen that, like, lots of really well-designed, really successful programs that are working at scale with government lose their impact once the partner goes. And some of the reasons for that include that some of the essential components of the program weren't sustained, the costs weren't fully taken care of in government budgets, the process of transition was too quick, or the government sort of struggled to take on some of the more nuanced aspects of design and delivery. So we know this stuff is really hard, but we've been trying to think about how can we work with our current partners to build this sort of culture of improvement and structures that will help address some of these things and sustain the program after STIR leaves. So Mark, if you go to the next slide. So we're thinking about how can we design an intervention for, or a partnership rather, for central education departments. And Nithya alluded to this earlier, calling it tentatively the Central Learning Partnership. And core to this Central Learning Partnership is trying to build capacity centrally. And the working idea that we have at the moment is constructing within government a specially dedicated unit, which the working name for which is the Lifelong Learning Unit. And how that would work is we would work with a partner for a period of 5 years, so the length of the current intervention, but build capacities in strategy, program design, and implementation in that LLU itself, so that once we leave, it's all been sort of built, developed, tested, and strengthened. So, Mark, if you go to the next slide, I can give an example of what this might look like in practice. So, the role of STIR, as I said, would be to provide close support to this unit. So, to give a practical example of what this might look like, we would run our team would run a parallel structure to the Government Lifelong Learning Unit, where we bring our expertise in strategy, program design, and program implementation to that partnership, and then support them over that 5-year period. So if we were to assume that we had a team of 3, and the government also had sort of a team of 3, we would have a country director who supports their equivalent in the government, a delivery lead who does the same, and a design and training lead who does the same as well. Now, the big difference here would be our program at the moment is overseen by a STIR employee at the district level. In this model, the government would provide those personnel. And what we would provide in terms of delivery is only 1 to 2 demonstration districts, we call them, as kind of examples of best practice that the government district leads could then look at as an example of what may be possible. Now, as I say, these are sort of quite big ideas. We're very much in the early stages of thinking about this, and we're looking to test this next year with some of our government partners. But I think in terms of input that we're looking for from you now, is probably not at this level of detail. I just wanted to share that with you to sort of try to bring to life some of the thinking we've been doing. But I think what's going to be most useful from you is a step further back than that. So as I said, our thinking is still at a very early stage, but the conversations that we've been having with central government are quite promising as to their appetite for trying this. But we do have to recognise again what I was talking about before in terms of the current evidence behind an intervention like this. We know that it's not hugely promising. So we will have to remain open and sort of true to our values, humble about what we do and don't know in this, and we'll design, test and iterate as we go along with this. But going back to what we were saying before, like, I think NGOs do need to try to find answers to this along with their government partners. Going back to what we were saying about how this post-COVID world will look. So while there's definitely risks and threats to this along the way, we're very aware of them. The opportunity is also huge. And what we'd love to do is to work with our partners to create and model a slightly different approach to creating sustainability. So in terms of the specific questions that we'd like from you, yeah, the overall one is about how can we realize true sustainability so that the approach lasts beyond us, and what are some of the opportunities and risks? Now, the first part of that, I suppose, relates to some of the opportunities and risks around what I've been talking about, around how we support central officials to embed this approach and role model lifelong learning in a way that actually lasts beyond STIR's intervention. So any sort of thoughts, questions that you have about some of the things I've outlined, or just general things that we need to think about that maybe it seems that we haven't yet, would be really, really helpful. But I think also crucially, the other thing that we really need to think about is quality at the district level. One of the things that we really do at the moment is try to really build the capacity of local leadership to run as much of the programme as they can. But we do provide a full-time district person in order to do that. So what we would love to know from you is, if we're going to take that away, what are some of the things that we should think about in order to mitigate the risk of quality lowering? So it'd be great if you could sort of, when you're doing the virtual field visits over the next couple of days, it'd be great if you could bear these questions in mind, and we'll come back to discuss them on Wednesday. So thanks very much for listening. If there are any questions, just to clarify anything that I've said here, please do ask them.
Hello.
Great, thanks, John. I think we have a couple of questions, and Atul, there's a good question from Atul as well. Just in the interest of time, we will come back to the questions towards the end of the session, everyone. But just really great to see some of the questions coming on chat. There's some really good insights as well. I can see there's probably a measurement session following up, Rain, Vishal, and some good questions coming in from that as well. So yeah, really good to see the engagement. And we'll come back with more follow-up on the questions that are coming up on chat. But what we're going to do now is take a really quick break, a 2-minute break. And what will happen is actually you'll see a different sort of setup on your system. You will not have to do anything. So we're just going into webinar mode in Zoom. It'll happen automatically as you go get your coffee or tea or snacks. What that does is actually limit in terms of audio and video capabilities, and we're doing this just so that we can enable a really robust interaction amongst the panelists as well, and the opportunity for all of us to be able to raise questions either through Q&A and chat. So while we'll have limited sort of audio and video capabilities, we'll still be able to sort of raise our hands and ask for sort of permission to speak, and also submit our questions through chat and Q&A as well. So yeah, so let's take a really quick 2-minute break, and we'll be back with a slightly different setup on your screens, but don't worry, you will not have to do anything about it. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. I know some of you will be seeing sort of changed capabilities on your screen, but that's we're just moving everyone to sort of webinar mode as well. Just as we wait for everyone to join back as well, I just wanted to take the chance to introduce our next session, which is a panel discussion. We have some really interesting panelists, and we're so great to have our stakeholders from India, Indonesia, Uganda join us, as well as Mike from the Maitri Trust as well. The panel discussion will be led by Jenny Wilmot. She's our Senior Director for Program Delivery. And I will hand it over to Jenny to take us through the panel discussion. And just to say similarly as well, if there are any questions, please keep them coming on Q&A and chat. We will definitely try and get to them at the end of the panel discussion. Over to you, Jenny.
Great, thanks. Lovely, thanks, Nithya. Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny, based in Kampala, so greetings from sunny Kampala, Uganda. I hope you enjoyed your short break. And thanks again for joining us today. My role at STIR is Director for Programme Delivery. We've run over time slightly, so I'm going to quickly move into the panel. We're really excited today to be joined by senior officials from our government partners, along with one of our long-term donors. So thank you to panel members for taking the time to join us. It's much appreciated. Just a few, Nithia's already mentioned practical issues, so but please remember to stay on mute if you're not talking to avoid any background noise. And as Nithya says, please post any questions in the chat. We'll try to integrate as many as possible in the time that we have. And if your question is for a particular panelist, please state this and we'll direct it accordingly. And you can also post insights onto social media as the panel goes along. And panelists, thank you again for joining us. But please remember, as we've got a really varied discussion, we want to have as varied discussion as possible. And we're fortunate to have such a rich panel. Please keep your answers brief and to the point as much as you can, although I'm sure you have lots to say. So let me introduce the panel. I'm going to ask each panel member to introduce them. If you could, each of you introduce your name, role and geography. Just a quick word on Uganda. Unfortunately, Mr. Mwinda, from the director, has had a bereavement, so he's unable to make it this afternoon. But we will be joined, and I'll ask him to introduce himself, from Burunji Musa from the Ministry of Education. So maybe Burunji, if you could introduce yourself first, that would be great. Are you there? Okay, let's wait for him to rejoin. Let's move on to Nadu, Mr. Devaka. If you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you fine.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah. So the program is going on well in our district. It's a new situation for the parents as well and the children. The parents were confused initially, but then afterwards, after we have sent them the first video, the teachers have taken it across to the children, and the work of learning and the teaching is going on. And I must say that the parents are happy that teachers are taking it forward to them in this pandemic situation when the children are just there and they're not learning much. So now they're happy that this is going on and the teachers are reaching out to them. So thanks to STIR for that.
Thank you. Could you just introduce, just tell the audience your position and job, where you're from, just briefly.
Yeah, I am the district coordinator for teacher training for Salem district in Tamil Nadu.
Great, thank you. Great to have you here. And Mr. Pandey from Delhi, perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Hello, Jenny.
Hi.
Myself, BP Pandey. I'm working as an officer on special duty in Directorate of Education, Delhi government, and looking after the various programs like Mentor Teachers Program, TDC program, and some other programs here. It's nice to talk here, really.
Great. Thank you. Lovely to have you here.
Yeah.
We look forward to hearing from you shortly. Thank you. And Mr. Vishwanath from Karnataka.
Now I joined. Welcome to all. I am very, very happy to participate in this discussion, and I hear about 1 hour discussion, which was very good. So I am supporting STIR activities in Karnataka since 2 years, which is very, very interesting activity. and which is fruitful activity, I thought.
Thank you. Good to have you here from Karnataka. And Dr. Siswanto, if you can introduce yourself. Just to point out that our colleague Karen will be translating, so there'll be a little bit of a delay in terms of this intro. Karen, are you with us? Can you introduce?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I think Pak Siswanto has an internet problem, but here's with us Pak Siswanto, Head of Educations from District Kota Kediri, one part of the district in East Java, Indonesia.
Great, thank you. And thank you in particular, Indonesia, for joining us. It's quite late in the day there, so thanks for doing that. And Mike Dean from the Maitri Trust, one of our long-term donors.
Hi everyone, it's great to join you today virtually. I'm a grants manager at the Maitri Trust. The Maitri Trust is a grant-giving organisation that focuses on the education sector in 3 different countries. So the focus geographically is South Africa, Mexico and India. And our strategy in alignment with STIR is to improve the quality of education at a systems level. And we couldn't do that without the partners like STIR that offer training and capacity building within the education system. Additional to funding, we're interested in supporting our partners' capacity themselves and their organisational health, and we're just as interested in that as the programmes that they run. As we do that, we tend to play a devil's advocate support, where we'll kind of critique and constructively challenge and support our partners. And this is a great example of the type of forum that STIR is open to allow for that. Probably more on the Wednesday. I think we'll get a chance to get into some of the guts of these things, but I'm delighted to join the esteemed panel of government representatives today, and thank you for having me.
Great, thank you, Mike. It's really good to have you here from Scotland. I think, Burundi, are you with us now? Could you introduce yourself from Uganda?
Hello? Hello?
Hi, we can hear you fine.
Yes. Hello?
Could you hi, we can hear you fine.
Yes.
Could you introduce yourself to the participants?
Okay.
Just your name and position.
Okay. I'm Birungi Musa, and I work for Ministry of Education and Sports Uganda in the Department of Basic Education.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
No, go.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, should I proceed?
Please.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to appreciate all my colleagues, the panelists, and all the participants in this very wonderful conference. Regarding the work we are working with the state education here in Uganda, in terms of teachers, we conduct monthly peer network meetings where teachers introduce new practices in their classrooms. Observation and feedback from head teachers are conducted, and then also get support from peer-to-peer where teachers support each other. There is some kind of adaptation and improvement of plan based on feedback. Now, for the head teachers, we run teacher network meetings. We also develop a culture of development observations and feedback with our teachers. We engage the peer networks, and also we also receive monthly coaching and support from the district education officials. Now, at the district level, STAR participate in participate termly, where they train our institutes with their peers to understand the new practices for each term. Lead training institutes for head teachers to empower them to lead teacher network meetings, which are effectively done. They also support teachers through coaching head teachers, and they also participate in the alignment meetings where key stakeholders attend at the district level. Now, of course, hello?
Can I just, hi, it's Jenny here. Let me just stop you there because we're going to come to a question on that in a moment. That's given us a helpful start in terms of an overview of the programme in Uganda. But let me just finalise the introductions and then we'll come back to you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. That's super helpful. So in the panel today, we're going to focus on how we can further support educational officials and consequently teachers to ensure that all teachers develop foundations of lifelong learning, both in the short and long term. Now, Nithya outlined earlier what we mean as by lifelong learning and what we feel that children, young people need to thrive in the changing world. So I'm not going to go through that again. We're going to get straight on with some questions so we can get the panel involved. So just starting with a bit of a broad question for our geographies in India and Uganda to start with. Just thinking about that question, based on your experience of working with STIR, what do you think is going well in terms of building the foundations of lifelong learning in our programme, and what could be improved? And if you could maybe, I know it might be tricky, but maybe if you could pick one thing that you think is going well and one thing that you think could be improved. And let's move to Delhi first. It's our longest of all our geographies in terms of our delivery. So maybe I could ask you, Dr. Pandey, to answer that question first. You're on mute. You need to just unmute yourself. Dr. Pandey, if you could just unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Jenny. Yeah.
Hi.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I think still in Delhi, we can say very strong support to team with respect to program implementation at the state and district level, and program very much aligned to current priority of states, which has components of lifelong learning. Program also helped in establishing schools as academic unit where the consistent of focus is on teachers' professional development. And I think the program has helped in the alignment of system officials at district level also. STIR's, I think, consistently supporting to the system in the implementation during this pandemic situation, COVID, in the responding the plan, support to the program in DOE primary school also focus on sustainability, where the role of TDC is instilled as an academic role school over the long term. Obviously, also STIR supporting for the capacity building of program of mentor teachers through DIET, District Institute of Educational Training in Delhi, to support TDC program on long term. This is the STIR's doing nowadays here. it's a really a strong support for the teachers by the STIRS here.
Thank you. And what do you think could be improved? Let's move on to Karnataka, like a third year of our partnership with Karnataka. What do you think is going well and what could be improved upon?
I think in the past few years, the STIRS no doubt has been working dedicatedly to improve teaching learning at a state level. At district level, I think should be more aligned. Because if district level will be more dedicated and there should be, I think, education. Oh, hello. I think the more engagement of the official in critical thinking and 21st century skills, that will definitely enhance the teaching learning process in the school. And I think STIRS should focus on a district level official also, because I think the education officials and needs a role model for the teachers. They must know that they will get support from the official and be acknowledged to their efforts. If STIRS will do at district level to align with the teachers. In fact,
you've just gone on to mute, but I think you're...
yeah, if district level will more become the role models, it will definitely go to school level also. Teachers will be the role model, and if the teachers will be the role model, for the students as well as teachers, obviously the education system will enhance. And Delhi government also constituting a curriculum committee and board committee to think about how we can shift the education of students from rote learning to critical thinking and deeper engagement. In this situation, STIRS have a great role to transform from rote learning to critical thinking and deeper engagement of the students through teachers and through the middle management. It means deputy directors or district education officers. So I think it's really a great. There is a obviously the scope for the STIRS to do at middle management level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, really helpful. Let me, we'll sum up a bit at the end. So let me just move on to Mr. Vishwanath from Karnataka. So maybe one thing you think is going well and one thing which could be improved upon.
Yeah, and in Karnataka, we are also doing some activities with the state, which directly connected to classroom process, really which targets the child's learning. So classroom practice is a very vital process in the life of a child, which will learn something with the interaction through its peers and teachers. So teacher capacity building through network is the STIRS objectives in early years. That is very much planned and designed by STIR team with the cooperation with government officials and STIR representatives. So after some meetings, they planned very well programs to build the capacity of CRPs, cluster resource persons, through BRCs and BRPs. So district institute and district champion activities are supported our teaching staff and supervisory staff. In this process, we realized that the human resource from STIR side is very, very limited in our state. We feel that we have to increase this support system. From STIR side also, we need one representative from Black, which is a minor part of district. So this is, we feel that we should have more number of STIR representatives in our states. This will help to improve our teaching learning process and school system and support system.
Great, thank you. Thank you, very helpful. Let's jump back to Uganda now. Mr. Burunji, you've been working with the STIR program for a number of years. So one thing you think that's been going well at the moment and one thing which you think can be improved upon.
Thank you very much. What we can improve on, teachers have to be improved on their classroom practices, to focus on the learners, and this has increased, can increase learner engagement in the learning process.
Great, so more focus on classroom practice.
What?
More focus on classroom practice.
Okay.
Yeah. Just checking that I'd understood you correctly.
My network is disturbing, but can I beg your pardon for the second question, madam?
It's fine. The question is the same. It's what's going well and one thing that could be improved. I think you've answered because you talked about what was going well earlier and you've mentioned what could be improved, and feel free to add in the chat if your network is challenging.
Yeah, I was, first of all, let me look at what has been going on very well before I go to what can be improved. So teachers have been improved on their classroom practices to focus on the learners, and this has increased learner engagement in the learning process. We've been having peer observation, coaching and feedback, which has provided room for continuous improvement among the teachers and the officials. And this is something that teachers are rolling out to the learners. Now, what can be improved? Of course, definitely we need to look at the quality of the feedback that our stakeholders provide. The needs to focus on improvement. We need to provide effective feedback to the learners using effective questioning skills that increase engagement, promote curiosity and critical thinking.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful, and that aligns with some of what Dr. Pandey said about critical thinking and feedback, which also aligns with our longitudinal study findings. So it's definitely something for us to collectively think about. I want to move to, thank you, Mr. Burunji, for now. We'll come back to you shortly. I want to move to Tamil Nadu now. Our newest geography in India. I mean, Mrs. Devika, you're from our most recently brought on board district in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from what you know about STIR so far and your work with us so far, how well do you think STIR is preparing for you for your role to lead the implementation of lifelong learning across your district, and what could be better?
Yeah, to begin with, the idea of lifelong journey, the both journey, that was very interesting and was taken very well by the teachers. And the block resource teacher educators are there. They have been briefed by the STIR education district lead. So they have participated with great enthusiasm, because each of them, as my counterpart from Karnataka had said, they are the resource persons in every cluster of schools. So if it went to them, then it will percolate well to the teachers as well. So that I found was very, very good. And I basically gave them a sort of a plan for how to go across with this. And I had given a 4-stage plan. One was for planning for the teaching. Now the teachers have a lot of time on their hands, particularly at the government schools. They are all at the schools while the students are there at their own homes. So the teachers have a lot of time for planning more than any other time. Now is the time when they have a lot of time for planning. So there is a planning for teaching. Then second, there is an execution for the teaching and follow-up of the learning by the students. And third, again, what are the teachers doing? What are the students doing? There needs to be a follow-up by the teachers of their students, by the HM of the teachers, and by the block supervisors of the various CRC heads, and again by the block resource teacher educators. So that will be at the grassroots level also. We are learning what is happening there at the schools, what is happening there with the children. Are the teachers able to reach out to the students? So these things we are doing. And then again at the district level, we have a random checking and support system by the block education officers and again by the district officials. So I have shared with our district lead a plan for this, and we need to provide a template wherein teachers can come in. And fortunately, we have a blog spot created by a wonderful BRT one, Mr. Ayyappan. So what he has done is he has become a role model for the other BRTs to bring in more teachers, rope in all the teachers, the HMs, and have a total involvement of everybody into the picture. So that is how we will be able to take it, particularly to the government school students here in my district. Jenny.
Great, thank you. Really great to hear, and we're really excited to see how that develops. And Indonesia, we moved to Indonesia if the connection's okay. I know we were struggling with connection a bit ago. Yeah, looks like it's okay. So we're about to launch the programme towards the end of this year, early next year in Indonesia. So we'd love to hear from you, Dr. Diswanto, what you see as the needs of teachers and officials in Indonesia, and how your partnership with STIR will respond to this. And just a reminder, whilst Karen is translating for us to participants, please feel free to add any questions to the panel in the chat facility.
Terima kasih. Jadi dengan adanya pandemi COVID-19, mau tidak mau pendidikan harus tampil ke depan. Karena apa? Untuk memulihkan kemajuan perekonomian, sosial, tidak lepas dari adanya pendidikan.
So I'll help to translate. With regards to COVID-19 pandemic become a world disaster, including it's affected to the state of Indonesia. We see that it has affected a whole system education, and especially for our district currently. Boleh dilanjut Pak Siswanto? Then, and we believe that if we want to improve the education, the frontliner will be the teachers.
Untuk itu, setir datang di Kota Kediri, Jawa Timur, Indonesia, sangat tepat, sangat bagus.
so that we see STIR Education's partnership with us in this current situation is a really good and is a really perfect timing for STIR to help Kota Kediri to improve the teachers' quality and teacher skills in our city.
Dibuktikan dengan adanya STIR melaksanakan pelatihan, pembinaan terhadap guru, pengawas, koordinator pengawas yang ada di Kota Kediri, bisa membuat program, bisa mengadakan perubahan metode pembelajaran.
So we believe that with STIR, with partnership with STIR, we want to see that teachers improve their teaching, and also stakeholder of school also innovate to their leadership to help teachers to improve and to innovate in our system education, and it will bring improvement in our city, in Kota Kediri, in Indonesia.
Dengan adanya buat program bersama antara guru, pengawas, koordinator pengawas, adanya kebersamaan, adanya program bersama, akan adakan perubahan terhadap metode pengajaran, sehingga penerimaan siswa terhadap materi yang disampaikan lebih mudah.
So we believe that there is a strong whole structure of education system, from the official, from the supervised, from the principals to teachers. So it will bring a good quality learning for students. That's what we hope for our partnership from STIR.
Great, thank you. And we're really looking forward to it as well. So it's great to hear. Thanks so much. Mike, I just wanted to move to you. We've been fortunate to have long-term support from the Maitri Trust. And so from working with us and thinking about building the foundations of lifelong learning, what do you think we're doing well and what could be improved?
Yeah, so just to commend STIR, I think you're doing a number of things very well that we would compare other partners who are trying to work in the same space with government. And I think you've managed that iteratively. I think that the qualities STIR have around that ability to adapt. I had a bunch of stuff, and I'm a bit, I need to be considerate about everybody's time here, but yeah, those compliments would include lifelong learning itself. So I think STIR examples that in their organisation and in the programme. Monitoring and evaluation, Rain spoke earlier. I think that some of that work has been transitional and pivotal and kind of fundamental to bringing funders on for the longer term. STIR, because of that iteration in their programme over the first few years of the partnership, it's a very difficult balance for implementers to walk. You know, funders are looking for impact, and if there's too much change, it's hard to track that. And then on the back of that, if there isn't enough change, then it's not going to be context rich for partnerships with government. So I think that STIR have done the necessary at the right time, and they're making great progress in those areas. And another area that's going well is communication, and I think that this forum talks to that, this will to expose and talk about the problems as well as the successes, and a real safe place to talk about some of the problems. Given that some of my peers on the panel today have been very good about the on-ground lived experience coming from that area of the programme and how it's affecting them, I might take us straight on to thinking about maybe some of the higher level things about what could be improved. So whilst I'm complimenting STIR on communication, I wonder whether STIR could do more around what's happening with regards to the alignment to national education frameworks. And I apologise for this sort of funder perspective and the slight bias to the geography in India, but I hope it chimes in with all the partner countries that if we can do this in India, maybe there's a framework to be learned and taken to the other countries. So over the next couple of years, so the National Education Plan has just been shared with the country, and I'm wondering how STIR actually aligns with that and might use that for advocacy and in order to sustain their programme. I think there's a big potential there. There's also a big risk of getting too deep and too far into those areas, but there are other frameworks, the National Professional Standards for teachers. They're creating new national standards by 2022. Then there's also the National Council for Education, Research and Training. Now, I'm very familiar with what STIR is doing at a state and a district level, but I wonder whether there's any component parts of these national frameworks that could maybe align and look into a little bit more closely about how might element of their working practices tie into continuing professional development points for teachers. Is there opportunity to look at initial teacher education where this framework's involved at that higher education institution level for teachers to learn some of these kind of routines and behaviors at that very early stage. I think there's a lot of potential because of the amount of change and great policies that are coming out of India, and I'm sure some of the other partner countries will have great policies as well, but how do we make sure that those become practice, and what STIR's role, now that it's an older organization coming into new leadership, what's that transition that can maybe be offered at that higher national level, light touch with an ear to it, but bringing that into real practices for some of these partner experiences of my panel peers, on a day-to-day level. Maybe I stop there, but a couple of thoughts to ruminate.
Thank you, Mike. That's really helpful, and that actually leads us nicely into what I think will probably be the final question, because we're a bit short on time. We wanted to ask panelists about the foundations of lifelong learning and how that does fit into your national, your country or state strategies and plans. And maybe we could go to Delhi first for this. So Dr. Pandey, just a few thoughts on the link between the work and the strategy, the policy of the Delhi state government.
Hello, Jenny. Suddenly phone has come out, so I could not hear your question properly.
No problem. The question was asking you about the link between the development of the foundations of lifelong learning and your policy and strategy at state level, so your education policy.
Actually, Delhi government is trying, I think lifelong learning, there is two most important things for life learning. That is the growth mindset and role modeling, as I already mentioned you, and 21st century skills. And the life learning depends on our ability to be humble and know. There is always a scope for learn more. And it is closely aligned to having a growth mindset, knowing we learn from challenges that come our way. Delhi government, in fact, focusing the life learning through various programs. And that is obviously. Hello.
We lost you there for 1 second.
Yeah. Sorry. So, actually, STIRS is doing a very good job for the life learning. Actually, for a growth mindset, they had done workshop on these things, and several other things from Delhi government, such as like happiness curriculum over here and entrepreneurship mindset curriculum. And Delhi government has started to motivate the students, to motivate the children towards the school level, towards the classroom. And also, I think the 20 teachers and official for engaging in them in the critical thinking program throughout the network meetings. And I think curriculum board committee and some government also doing how to student come, more students come to the school, and more students align the teaching learning process to their through online training, through online classes during this pandemic situation. and teachers, we are working for the worksheet to, and also send the worksheet through SMS, through worksheet through parents, from schools to the parents. Parents will, and obviously the students of Delhi for government school, I think belongs from the very poor community, from Juggi Jhopadi community, and a shift of focus on assessment method in the new education policy, as well as in the Delhi Curriculum Board Committee, so on focus on meeting students where they are and recognize different strengths. Newly formed Delhi curriculum committees using more effective teaching and learning method. So learners or students can can be motivated through this strong strategy. This is our strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for detailing that. That's great. And I know that in our other geographies, we're trying to work with governments to look at how we fit with policy. And so Mike's point is very pertinent. I think sadly we've run out of
Jenny, in fact, we are also focusing on social emotional well-being now. And this will be the part of our curriculum. New curriculum committee also decided this will be the part of the curriculum. So this social well-being, social and emotional well-being for the students level, also teachers level also, because teachers also facing the same problems nowadays.
It's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And much of our most recent content in response to the COVID pandemic is on social well-being. So we've been working on that in all of our geographies. That's a really helpful input. Thank you. I think sadly we're out of time. It's almost 5 here in Uganda. We're due to finish at 5. And but I'd like to, I'm going to hand to Nithya to summarise and to describe the next few days. But I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the panellists for taking part. I know that sometimes connection issues can be tricky. And for stepping in from all over the world to come and take part in the panel today. So thank you. And over to Nithya.
Thanks, Jenny. And I just wanted to thank everyone again. I know this is an ambitious panel, but we also wanted to have the opportunity to hear from as many of our stakeholders as we can. And we really appreciate all of you, sticking around, as given the connection challenges, time difference. We really appreciate the time you've taken out to enable this. I think key for us has been from sort of hearing Dr. Pandey, Ms. Devika, Vishwanath, Dr. Siswanto, Birunji Musa, Mike as well. I think there's a lot to do as we sort of started off the session as well. And I think in terms of some of the things that are key, especially around sort of the reflection, the critical thinking, focusing on quality. I think it's really sort of great to see those common themes emerging across all of our, geographies, as well as the new ones. And then I think to Mike's point in terms of, what we can strengthen more, just bringing out much more clearly that alignment, whether this is sort of national education policies, district policies, sort of being much more clearer about how sort of what we're doing is aligning to sort of that wider piece itself. I think there is, we've taken away notes from this, but there's more we can do on that. And it's also just to sort of to wrap up as well. It's sort of nice to hear, and I just see on chat Ms. Devika mentioning that as well. Dr. Pandey talking about the importance of social emotional well-being. I think we sort of undermine that quite a bit, but it's not just, I think, as a result of COVID or sort of this new normal, but over the longer term itself, how important that is, that we focus on that across all levels of the education system, and that becoming really key within sort of the schools and the districts and regions that we're working in as well. So again, thank you so much for the patience. Thank you so much for the insights and the inputs that you have shared with us today. I know each of us have taken copious amounts of notes. We will summarize this in a detailed paper later on. But just wanted to, again, really thank you for the time you've given us today. In terms of next steps, thank you, Mark. So we're looking forward to an exciting day of field visits tomorrow. So we have 4 of these happening. Just a heads up that Tamil Nadu, Karnataka will also have some amount of translation, and that is in keeping with the relationship, the nature of the stakeholders that we're working with. But we have the very able STIR teams. They're doing translation both on audio as well as chat. We're looking forward to a really exciting visit in Delhi, where we're going to get to see the actual network meeting in action. And also in Uganda, which is actually our first ever virtual field visit in Uganda. And I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's a really exciting one. So look forward to that, everyone. And so tomorrow we will focus on the field visit. So really would love each of you who've attended today to take a lot of this discussion, the questions we've raised as you are engaging in those field visits, and sort of keep those questions in mind as you're engaging with our stakeholders, and also sort of questions and feedback you have for us. We're looking forward to then seeing many of you on our final day on Wednesday, which we will kick off with your inputs and insights from the field visits, and then deep dive into the key questions that Rain and John laid out for us earlier today. So that's it from our end of today. Thank you so much, everyone. It's just been great to see this global audience, and thank you for being patient with us and technology. As Mark had mentioned earlier in the day, we do have the option of an optional networking session. This is something we've always really enjoyed when we've done the PSGs in person in India or in Uganda. So to the extent possible, we'd like to do that today. So, we'll hang around for a bit longer. So if you'd like to continue the conversation or be introduced to others in the attendees today, we'd be happy to make those introductions. Once again, from all of us here at STIR, thank you very much.